Let's take a minute and review the case of Reggie. It's on page 82 in the 9th edition. So Reggie comes to see Savannah, who's been a practicing therapist for 2 years. Reggie's been in this long-term relationship, but he's had several affairs, which he blames mostly on his partner. He comes to therapy to find a way to kind of alleviate his guilt and possibly shame. After a few sessions, Savannah sees that a lot of their discussions are centered around the relationship with his partner. So she recommends that he go see some couples counseling, which he refuses. She then tells him that she cannot, in good conscience, continue to see him because his behaviors bother her, and she sees no way to help him obtain his goal of alleviating his guilt and continuing his affairs. So she gives him 3 referrals and then sends him on his way. Your text asks you what your reaction is to Savannah refusing to continue counseling with Reggie, and wants to know if you feel like she's exposing or imposing her values on a client. So think about that for a minute. The bottom line is that Savannah is not being very therapeutic, and she is imposing her value system pertaining to the affairs on Reggie. This part right here where she says that she cannot, in good conscience, continue to see him because his behavior bothers her. That's being very judgmental. This issue is not about her, but about her client. Now, Reggie is creating an impossible situation for himself. He's blaming his partner for his affairs, but he's unwilling to do couples counseling. However, if Savannah would have taken the time to develop that therapeutic relationship in a non-judgmental and empathetic way, she may have been able to convince Reggie to pursue couples counseling with his partner. There's a growing awareness and willingness to explore spiritual and religious matters within the context of counseling. In substance abuse counseling, for example, they feel that eventually spirituality is a critical component to the recovery process. Spiritual and religious matters are therapeutically relevant. Because spiritual and religious values play such a major part in human life and in an individual's search for meaning, our client's spiritual values should be viewed as a potential resource in therapy. It can be a source of strength and an instrument for promoting healing and well-being. Growing empirical evidence that our spiritual values and behaviors can promote physical and psychological well-being. There are many paths to fulfilling our spiritual needs. Please remember that it's not your role as a helper to prescribe any particular pathway, but it is your job to assist your clients in exploring their values to determine the degree to which they're living within the framework of their own personal value system. You may have to help your clients understand the difference between religion and spirituality. Spirituality is seen as less formal than religion. It's an innate human quality. It's what connects us to other people, nature, and the source of life. Both religion and counseling ponder the following questions. Who am I? What's the meaning of life? Both counseling and religion foster healing through an exploration of self by learning to accept oneself. Self-acceptance by admitting one's shortcomings, by dealing with guilt, by accepting personal responsibility, coping with resentments, and letting go of self-destructive patterns of thinking, feeling, and acting. So take a second now and look back on both of these slides. Look at them through the eyes of religion and through counseling, and you can see some of the similarities. Working on healing, working on self-acceptance, dealing with guilt, letting go of self-destructive patterns. These things go hand in hand and can be dealt with both in religion or in counseling. There are a lot of similarities. The differences between counseling and religion include: counseling does not involve the imposition of the counselor's values on clients, and religion mostly involves doctrine and beliefs that individuals are expected to accept and practice. Be sensitive to the needs of your clients concerning these issues. Listen to them and let them lead the way. Counselors must understand their own spiritual and religious beliefs if they hope to gain insight and appreciation of the beliefs of their clients. Your value system influences every facet of your counseling practice. No therapy is value-free. You have an ethical responsibility to be aware of how your beliefs affect your work and to make sure you do not unduly influence your clients. Counseling can help clients gain insight into the ways their core beliefs and values are reflected in their behaviors. Clients may discover that what they're doing is based on beliefs that may not be functional for them anymore. They may want to re-examine their values. Sometimes the guilt, anger, and sadness that clients experience are often results of a misinterpretation of the spiritual and religious realm, and this can lead to depression and a sense of worthlessness. Counselors must remain non-judgmental. Sometimes a referral must be made to the client's religious community. Become familiar with members of the religious community that you collaborate with and refer clients when it's appropriate. A word of caution. Be aware of your own countertransference when it comes to religion. Don't push your own religious beliefs or impose your non-religious or anti-religious attitudes on clients. This chapter introduces the idea that discussing spiritual and religious matters in group could be effective also if there's a respectful dialogue and the group is tolerant of each other's views. Also, not using the group as a platform to preach their faiths is an integral part in making it a really safe place to talk about these issues. Your chapter talks about spiritual and religious values even being incorporated into the assessment, the initial assessment and intake process. I don't think this is done very often. It's still kind of a scary subject for counselors to move into. But the chapter suggests that spiritual and religious dimensions should be included in part of the intake procedure or in the early phases of the counseling process. And this is one of the reasons why. In the assessment process, you should ask questions pertaining to their spiritual and religious issues because they may be relevant to the client's presenting problems. You should ask about the role religion and spirituality play in their life, or maybe was it a part of their life in the past? We need to take on the idea that therapy should be a holistic approach to the client's life, and spirituality and religion may be a part of that. Your chapter concludes by talking about the values pertaining to end-of-life decisions. Now, this is a very controversial issue, and you need to be really aware of what your state laws are, because laws trump ethics, and you have to be very careful and cognizant of that. Counselors need to review their views of suicide and how to treat suicidal clients. Maybe some of these clients are capable of making autonomous and rational decisions about ending their life. When you have this view, then counselors are free to explore alternatives to suicide while at the same time respecting clients' autonomy and freedom of choice. So your chapter starts out by giving you a few definitions that are important related to this subject. Rational suicide is when a person has decided, after going through a decision-making process and without coercion from others, to end his or her life because of extreme suffering involved with a terminal illness. Aid in dying is providing a person with the means to die. The person self-administers the death-causing agent. You may remember a few months ago, it was all over the news, about a woman, I don't remember what state it was in, but she had terminal brain cancer. And she had pills, and she said that she was going to die when she felt like it was time for her to die. She knew she was going to die anyway, and that she had come to terms with it. She had worked with a counselor about it, and when she felt like it was time, she was going to end her own life. It wasn't probably a month later that she actually completed that act and did take the pills and died in her home with dignity and with her family surrounding her. Hastened death is speeding up the dying process, which can entail withholding or withdrawing life support. The criteria to evaluate whether a person's desire for suicide or hastened death is very rational. They have to have an unremitting and hopeless condition. The person is acting under his or her own free will and is under no outside pressure to make the choice. The person has engaged in a sound decision-making process that includes consultation with a mental health counselor who can make an assessment of mental competence. They explore the person's values regarding suicide. They've worked on how this act will impact their significant others. And they've discussed very objectively with medical and religious professionals and with significant others how this is going to affect all of these areas. Now, be careful to work within your scope of practice, but I think that the whole purpose of Chapter 3 is to help you to be aware and do a lot of self-discovery about your own values and how they may affect your therapeutic relationship with your clients, and to be aware of where your own beliefs and your own biases are. So continued self-awareness and taking a self-inventory is really important. It's a process that should continue throughout your life.